All right. We appear to be live, but Agnitor might have lost internet again. So I will start us off as he reconnects. Welcome, everyone. This is Pater, the Journal of Solar Culture, Solar Sunday. We have some interesting things to talk about that we've been going over. While Jack is reconnecting his internet, I'll just say a few words that are important to me. This week, we lost Scott Adams, who is a fantastic comic artist, the artist behind Dilbert, a commentator, a public speaker, an author, but also, interestingly, a hypnotist. Much of what we talk about here at the Order of Fire as far as masculine virtues connects to some of the skills that he was teaching. Looks like Agnitor is back. I was just saying a few commemorative words about Scott Adams while you were away. It looks like you're
like, I'm just going to go with the show I was going to do before.
Well, it's easier to throw a few things out there.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on. The internet connection in my house is reset like twice in the past 15 minutes, which it never does. And we were talking about this before the show. You can't function in life if your internet goes off. What's happening? Maybe they're having some trouble in the area or something like that. Hopefully that's not a thing. But I guess if it's allowing you to stay on, which is weird. Well, I guess not, because it's going through StreamYard. Which, by the way, I'm not. We don't have a sponsorship through StreamYard or anything, but I have to say, of all the internet services that I pay for, they're constantly improving things.
It's a good.
Every time I log in, like, here's a new feature. Here's a new feature. It's really cool, and it's all like useful stuff, not like Instagram features. Right. It's all worthwhile. But anyway, so we wanted to do the show this week. We talked about what we were going to talk about. I got jumped in late, and I've been reading this book, which is not a new book, obviously, but Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein. And I've always heard Heinlein brought up in my circles, but yeah, I was never really. The Order has changed me in the sense, being the Order of Fire, it has affected me in the sense that the guys that got me reading fiction. Like, I wasn't reading any fiction. I read it, when I was younger, but I didn't read any fiction until we started reading Dune as a group a few years ago, right before the first movie came out. And then recently they got me listening to Warhammer 40K, and I was 3 books into that now. And then that on book 4 got boring, so I was like, how about I wanted to listen to Stranger in a Strange Land, because that is where they got the word grok from, which grok is obviously Elon Musk's AI. And I was like, well, I knew what it meant. I'd heard that word for years, but before he turned it into the AI. But I was like, let me get the context. Let me grok the context, of that, and grok it in its fullness. And now I just want to talk like that all the time. I've been listening to this book constantly. I'm like, I want to grok it in its fullness, because that's the way the band from Mars in it. And so let me give you a little. I'm only about halfway through it now. I thought I was almost at the end, because I felt like I hit a climax, but clearly I have like 8 more hours. I looked, but and.
So if we lost Agnitor again, let me just jump in. Hopefully this won't be a pattern through the whole thing. But Heinlein is usually talked about in relation to 3 novels in particular. He's written more. The first Heinlein novel I read was one called Tunnel in the Sky, which was actually very good. Doesn't get talked about a lot, but he's usually talked about in reference to Starship Troopers, to Stranger in a Strange Land, and The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which loosely correspond to affirming fascism, hippie communism, and libertarianism, respectively. So it's not clear that he necessarily fully embraces any of these, but, explores the implications of these ways of thinking in his fiction, which is a sign of a good thinker. And someone worth looking into. So all of them are worth reading. Well, I can't say that for The Moon is a Harsh Mistress just because I haven't read it. But Starship Troopers and The Stranger in Strangeland, certainly. Yes, the word grok, which we get from Stranger in Strangeland, we can say that it means understanding at a deep, fundamental, complete level. Like, do you understand this? Yeah, sure. Do you grok it? Well, maybe not. We've been rejoined. So I was just giving a little bit of backstory on the trilogy of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, Stranger in Strangeland, and Starship Troopers, which correspond very loosely to fascism, hippie communism, and libertarianism, roughly, where he's exploring those in different directions, and which puts Heinlein in none of those camps exactly, but openly exploring the mentality behind them, and then explaining the difference between just understanding and grokking something.
Yeah. A lot of people maybe just understand things and don't grok anything. The people who don't have an internal monologue.
Can grok is a good question too, because can a large language model truly grasp something?
That is interesting, because this is a great quote that I heard from somebody the other day. It was repeated. I forget who repeated, but it's very much similar to what we talk about. But it was saying someone said that their friend, it was like a smart guy. Someone said that their smart friend started lifting, and they asked, well, why did you start lifting? And it wasn't to get in shape or get girls or whatever. It was so that I didn't become lost in the world of symbols, and lose touch with what the symbols mean.
Very mishma. Yes,
very much. And maybe, who knows, maybe he's quoting that, because that makes sense when he gets to the lifting quotes. But yeah, I mean, it's, that's the question, because grok can only read symbols. The symbols he can't understand. Grok can't understand reality in its fullness.
Yes.
And so it's an interesting question. Can grok understand anything? Obviously, he can understand math, but math is symbols, but to a certain extent, until you get into weirdness of math. I know there's a level of math where it gets like witchcraft, but anyway. But what I wanted to talk about that I really liked out of this book so far, I'm really getting a kick out of it. I highly recommend it. Is the premise of the book? You didn't talk about the premise of it.
Not really. I just laid out the course. Another fun one is Tunnel in the Sky, which doesn't get grouped in, doesn't get referenced a lot in reference to Heinlein, but it's very, very good, fun read. But I haven't talked about the premise at all. Okay,
yeah, the premise of it, and then if I get cut out again, you can just keep going. The basic premise of it is that, which surprised me. I didn't know what it was about at all. I was just like, let's give this a try. And it's basically like there's a man from Mars. There's people from Mars. They crash on Mars, and then one of these guys gets raised by Martians, and then he's sent back, to meet humans, and they try to keep him under wraps. And then this really interesting character who lives in the Poconos, he gets a hold of it, and he's like a doctor. He's like a 70-year-old man who's like a doctor and a lawyer and a screenwriter, and he's just incredibly witty, and he's making me laugh out loud all the time. And I wanted to talk about, and so this whole novel is really a way to explore human nature and human religion and all these questions by using the Martian as kind of a straight man, because the Martian takes everything literally, and he doesn't understand deception, and he doesn't understand the idea that people can disagree about truth. And it's a way to deal with all these weird human questions and all of our metaphors and all these things that if you took them literally, they'd be insane. And one specific thing happens in the novel where the Martian, is listening to a televangelist. He's watching a televangelist program, and he doesn't. Obviously, he's taking it literally. Everything that's happening, he's taking it absolutely literally. And the main character, the character that we're talking about, the Jubal Herschel, is an agnostic. And he's just this very skeptical man who's very distrustful of government, distrustful of bureaucracies, but also realizes that they're necessary. He's not a fruitcake. He's not a comedy fruitcake. He realizes that like these things are necessary and this is how the world works. But I don't trust these son of bitches. And it is basically, and anyway, there's a setup where he basically has to steel man God to try and explain the concept of what religion is, and try and explain to this Martian why all these people have different versions of truth. And so it's a really interesting conversation, and you could probably deep dive on that conversation itself a really long way. But I thought that was a good jumping off point to talk about how people arrive at the ideal, at the idea of God. I can't give you spoilers any further than I am, Mr. Rooster, because I've only made it halfway through. But so it's just a lot of interesting conversations, a lot of stuff. But this character, I think, is something it's a character that I grew up very familiar with. I felt like it was in a lot of novels. There was a lot of people, a very American character, I think, who doesn't trust authority. I think Americans are just genetically, and there's a line about this in the book, like we're just genetically like distrustful of authority, or at least we used to be. And a lot of us still are. And I think we saw during the great troubles of 2020 and so forth who is and who isn't. But people were just like, hey, wait, I don't believe you. Like, I don't trust you. And that's, I think, just part of the American spirit. And I think that's part of what maybe led a lot of us to solar idealism. Is that like, just because people were talking about faith and God and whatever, it's like, well, just because you say words and I can't see what you're talking about, that doesn't mean I believe you, because there are all kinds of people in the world trying to put one over.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that you're not one of them. And just because you say that something's true doesn't mean I'm going to accept it, because I'm not a child. And, this can be good. Like we're seeing this in the internet right now, to the good and bad, with ever since X and free speech became real again for a little bit. And you see, like I said, what I called the free speech fire hose. You have all these people who are just naturally they've just become very distrustful of anything. And so it creates a little bit of havoc, because then you have there's a certain amount of trust in the system has to be there for it to function. But people are so distrustful of everything that you get all these people with these kind of crazy snake oil salesmen and crazy ideas, and just out of nowhere, they'll just believe any damn thing. And my old friend Trevor used to say that, and I still talk to Trevor. It's not like dead or anything. He always used to say that he loved the turn of the century, like around 1910, 1920, something like around that period, turn of the 20th century, because you could say any damn thing and get a following of whatever. And obviously it was true in Europe, it was true in America, but there were all these people who would just make up crazy shit, and they would get a following. And we're in a place like that with the internet, I think, right now. I mean, you can find, if you say something crazy, you can probably find someone on YouTube that has an audience to support that.
It was about that age, I think, where one of my favorite little niche history videos comes from a theology professor named Ryan Reeves on the history of flat Earth theory. And it turned out there was this one guy in the 1800s who hated Isaac Newton personally, and he had a grudge against industrialization. And so from out of the Christian socialist movement, which was kind of big in France and certain parts of Britain and Denmark and a few other places, which he started just preaching anti-science and anti-Newtonianism in particular. I forget his name, but he was very good at staying calm and mocking his like increasingly frustrated scientific adversaries. And so he was able to be very persuasive. And this is just like rekindled in the age of the internet. And it's this flat earth thing is kind of back in funny ways. Any damn thing, as you might say.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it is interesting how there's this reactionary tendency from blind trust on one side to not just absolute rejection of anything authoritative, but the rejection of authority seems to invariably come along with a blind acceptance of anything which presents itself as heterodox. And
Right.
this is how you end up with like people doing like all kinds of crazy stuff. And like, it's on the one hand, it's very cool that people are always questioning authority and are always retesting things. But there's this Chesterton's fence principle of like, if you don't know why something's there, maybe don't tear it down. My wife and I were just talking about this earlier today. She's been reading this book about the history of tuberculosis, and a lot of tuberculosis came not just from human to human transmission, but from bovines, from cows. And the way they got rid of tuberculosis, which was infecting over half of the population of Europe, like more than half of Europe had tuberculosis at various points of the Victorian era, was through pasteurization. But since we've gotten rid of tuberculosis almost, there's a lot of people who are like, why should we be pasteurizing? Isn't it better to drink raw milk? And it's like, well, in some ways it might be, but there's this trade-off of this other thing that we've forgotten about that we'd like to keep away, right. And in the face of this trade-off, do you want 100% of all the macronutrients or whatever that you get from I don't know the science behind raw milk ingesters or whatever, but like, keeping tuberculosis at bay at a socio-cultural level is kind of a big deal.
Right.
So, like,
and
it's tempting
you have to know.
Yes.
You have to know like what the other pieces are, because vaccinated for tuberculosis now. Like, is that a thing? I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know.
And I'm just saying this from one book. The book could be wrong too. You have to be able to explore these things without to entertain without being persuaded, as Plato might say.
Yeah, because I did the raw milk thing when I was in Utah. I don't really have access to it here. I'm not sure I could find it, but it's harder to find it here. It was really easy in Utah, and it is better. It does taste better, and a lot of people who think they're lactose intolerant are just can't process pasteurized milk. Is one of the pieces that, like, people who couldn't eat milk before could eat that.
That's cool.
Because it has the enzymes to digest it in it, whereas all that stuff gets killed in the process. And so that's part of the deal. So it's not that's part of the selling point for it as well. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the tuberculosis. Weirdly, I've never heard the tuberculosis argument. I've heard like make you sick for other reasons. But those were all very unconvincing. The tuberculosis thing is interesting, but yeah, again, there's so much information out there, then everybody has to parse through it and figure out.
And it's one of those cases where it's like, at the individual level, it might make total sense to go raw milk, but then from a politician's perspective, or who's trying to like, okay, how do I prevent a third of my population from coming down with TB, which we can manage a lot better now than we could in the Victorian era with sanatoriums and so forth. But like, still, that would be a pretty big stress on our, on our society, and it would like ruin a lot of lives. How do we mitigate that? It's like, well, this is the kind of tough call that like, maybe it does make sense to pass a law that like requires pasteurization, even though it's worse at the individual level, but it's tough.
Well, unfortunately we live in a weird hysterical society, and there's commentary about that in the book. There's a great quote that he says about remind me to write a popular piece about people who have to watch the news every day. And because people, it's like, there's so much hysteria over everything. People can't have a sober discussion about that.
Right.
Like, oh, well, here are the trade-offs, here are the whatever. But then, there are so many people that will become hysterical very quickly on either side that it all becomes very political. Like, obviously, there's a whole bunch of people in the country right now who, if RFK saved like 1 million babies this year, they would still be mad about it.
Yes.
Like, no matter what he says, he's going to be wrong because it's a political thing.
Conversely, if a guy turned a monkey habitat foundation into a gain of function research operation and killed 20 million people, they might still call him a saint.
Right? Exactly. We got Saxon in there. He's giving us dropping us some knowledge bombs in the comments. So I think he's to be continued. He's got it down.
Yeah. Cities were just absolute havoc on the immune systems of the occupants. If anyone gets the opportunity to go to Edinburgh in Scotland and gets an opportunity to do the underground tour there and see the conditions in which the poor had to live and the absolute state of pestilence and filth and death. And I'm sure it was no better in France and Germany and other parts of England during the Industrial Revolution, let alone like China, where a lot of the like urbanization really began. It's awful. And you suddenly understand where like white people autoimmune diseases come from. And just it's crazy. Anyways,
brown milk, not good.
This is where this actually ties back to the whole like straight man thought experiment mode of Stranger in a Strange Land a little bit, because it is good to try to approach these practices. Why do we do pasteurization? This doesn't seem to make sense. Why do we still do it when it doesn't seem to be relevant anymore? Why do we practice religion this way? Can you explain it to an outsider? Explain it to me like I'm 5, as a Redditor might say.
Right.
And like that, it can be good to do that straight man thing, but you also run into things that are like with the Chesterton's fence metaphor, things that are complex. And if you find that you can't explain how it works, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad or crazy. Right. Like I install lights and outlets and stuff every day. I cannot explain how electricity works. And most electrical engineers can't either. Physicists are a little better, but even it takes some effort to explain how it works. And the fact that we don't understand every detail doesn't mean, therefore, it's ridiculous or absurd. And so there's like an epistemic danger that comes along with the straight man mode of thinking about how we do things. But that's not to say there isn't value in it. And I think Heinlein does it very well in Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah. I just think it's important to be suspicious of people's motives. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And there's a lot of people, like I said, one of the reasons why we created the order is because there was a big influx of everybody deciding that they needed to go find Jesus. And then the questions are, well, someone's telling you some things. Do you not think that they have motives?
Yeah.
Do you think that there are pure people in the world who have no ulterior motives and get nothing out of, whether it's personal or, not everything's financial, like whether they get some kind of gain out of it, they get status in their church, or they get status, from bringing you in, or there's all kinds of different ways that humans are motivated.
Right.
Or they just want you to be part of it. Like, for the same reason I want people to join the RFI, like make our club cooler by like, you're cool, you should be a part of our club so our club's cooler, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's a lot of what what things are. But people have motivations. So when they're telling you something is true and that you should believe it despite your objections, and you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense, and they're like, no, 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 no. and they just keep telling you, this is, like I said, this is always why I was out on religion, like from a very young age. Like I would be like, why, and I got you have to have faith, you have to have faith, you have to have faith.
Yeah.
And that becomes, like, I'm like, you're conning me. Like 12-year-old me is like, you're conning me. And that's I think how it feels, and I think people should be wary of that, because very often it is the case. And you look at like all these big campus-sized churches around me are making a lot of money. There's a lot of money in that business, like, and to get people in the door and get them like donating and whatever. It's like there's a lot of money there. There's a lot of influence. There's a lot of power over other people,
which is not proof.
Power is a huge motivator
of corruption. But it is a sign. It is an indication of, like, whenever you see that kind of concentration of power and money, like the more of that there is, the more of a flag to be mindful of that. And this goes back quite a ways. If you read like Mark Twain, he was very aware of the religious con man archetype.
Again, very American personality. Like, that's what I'm talking about. These are the kind of guys I'm talking about. Like, these are part of, like, this is.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I can't remember. Who's the German American newspaper man who translated Nietzsche in the 1920s? Mencken. Yeah.
My man.
Mencken was also very, very
democracy aware. Is a theory that people should get what they want, and good and hard.
Yes.
Yes.
One of my favorite, and even, like, I'm not super fond of this statesman, but even Abraham Lincoln had a funny line about preferring his. I'm trying to say it with a straight face. He said he preferred his preachers to appear to be fighting an angry swarm of bees. Just the visual of it is very.
Well, at least they've got the passion. Like. That's a great line. But yeah,
it's sort of a tell of where his own beliefs lie. But to the point, because Christians will often speak in two ways about God, and I think this will go into the question of, like, how did we arrive even before Christianity, because the idea of God predates Christianity by thousands of years. There's a way of talking about God as, like, well, we can't know, you have to have faith, and there's another way of talking about God of, like, no, we essentially can know by reason. And this is where a lot of the apologetics go, and a lot of the online debate centers. And in this, one of my recent professors, actually, Dr. Millerman, put out a video just today about Heidegger's take on Christianity. And he basically said, when you look at the essence of Christianity, not all the ways that people talk about it, but the essence of it, faith as a virtue is not just one way of knowing among many, but is like a central virtue. You can't be Christian-like if you don't have faith. You can have all these reasons, but the reasons alone aren't sufficient to get you to being truly having that Christian spirit. And what Heidegger says is that faith is a way of knowing, but it is not a way of thinking. And it is, in fact, antagonistic to thinking. Oh, it's kind of indifferent to its own separation from thinking. Heidegger has a very strange way of putting these kinds of things. But the adversarial nature between faith and thought seems to be what bothered Mencken and Mark Twain and perhaps Lincoln and many, many people, including us, up to the present. I mean, it went back further still than that, too.
For sure. Well, because they see people being manipulated.
Yes.
Like, we see people around them being manipulated. Like, you feel that you have to do this because of something that I don't really think is going on. And so you're having to go through all these motions of doing these certain things things to satisfy something that maybe doesn't seem to be in your best interest.
Yes.
And I was talking about this today. I was talking about with my professor. We were talking about different religious groups, and like how they can be a little bit naive sometimes, and not realize everything that's going on. And there's a lot of things, and they can repress a lot of things that then come out, and this is an old thing. That's an old criticism of religion. It's kind of the 60s criticism of religion almost, but it is true to some extent. Like, you can have people who like really just have no idea about themselves. They don't know themselves because they've been convincing themselves that they're good people all their lives, and so they have no sense of their shadow to a certain extent, and which can be dangerous, because then they do things that they don't even understand that they're doing. Like, I know what Bad Jack wants to do. Like, and I have to keep my eye on certain things. But if I want to behave in the way that I think is right. But there's people who convince themselves and live in this kind of naive state of mind where they just don't know themselves very well because they're trying so hard to fit a script.
Yeah.
It becomes very tricky.
And it might be like the question of religion, and as the late and great Christopher Hitchens would have specified, organized religion in particular. It might be a matter of trade-off. Perhaps these things do give a kind of structure. I've come to think of religion as a sort of doctrinal structure to aid in spirituality. Like, you might go to the gym because you want to become stronger. You want to connect with the spirit of strength. Maybe you hire a trainer who knows more than you to help you along the way. That's the religious, and there isn't really a distinction in this regard between religion and discipline, except that religion seems to generally include institutional organization to it. But with that institutional organization come all the risks of corruption and conflicts of interest and so forth that come with larger institutions, whether it's in politics or in science, or in any other large institution where there's a lot of power and money at play. But there is a cost to this faith. And Hitchens' final debate against William Dembski, I think, he gave this absolutely beautiful. It's one of the greatest lines in the history of debate. But he says that if you could, Christianity is offering us this absolute certainty, this faith that can't give way. He says, don't think of that as a gift. Think of it as a poisoned chalice and push it aside. Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way. And that what was amusing is that followed on this lengthy diatribe against Mother Teresa, which is a very unpopular thing to do back in the mid 2000s, but which he's been completely vindicated about. Even religious believers kind of don't like to talk about her anymore because of the uncomfortable things that you learn when you dig into that. And that's the result of thinking for yourself. Are there risks involved? Absolutely. But I was talking to another friend who had struggled very badly with opiate addiction, heroin, and he was at some Alcoholics Anonymous type program, and he said just watching all these people be talked into accepting that they will always be an addict. They are always an addict. That is your identity now, and you have to think of yourself as an addict. And he was like, he's watching these people accept this, and he's like, every single one of them relapses. It's just a matter of time. He's like, I refuse to identify as an addict. Right. He's like, I'm not. I had a problem. I solved my problem. I gave myself, without mentioning his name, I'll say his strategy. He's like, I gave myself one bullet and a year, and I refused to take the easy way out for 1 year. And if I could get my life back around, I'd give it everything I had for 1 year. And if that still didn't fix it, then I'd take the easy way out. It only took him a couple months. So that was his strategy. He's like, I don't have a problem. And he's fucking killing it in life now. So,
cool.
but that mentality of like, you must accept that you're an addict in order to fix yourself is very in line with the spirit. And maybe that helps some people, but like the cost is extraordinary there.
Well, and aside from that just being terrifically annoying, I mean, those people are like, oh, like you probably shouldn't drink, and you know that you shouldn't drink, whatever. And then that's one thing, and then there's like, I have to talk about drinking, not drinking every day, and that is the most annoying person to deal with. Like it's like, okay, well, if you don't drink, then don't drink. Like you don't have to make. I'm a grown up, and you can make your own choices. You don't have to like justify it to me every day. This is for you that you're doing that, which is kind of a problem. Yeah, it's and again, like so many things, there's probably an IQ component to this as well.
There could be.
There's
different
IQ and other things.
But this sort of goes back to the question of, first of all, generalization, but also the how do we know things? How do you know you're an addict? Because the path that says you who have a problem, you have to accept this word, that can be extended to all kinds of things, to all kinds of people who don't have problems. And this is, I think, the thing that makes the God question
transgenderism.
Right. How do you know you're a man? Right.
Well, exactly. You're like implanting a thought and then like going through this whole, it's a very religious process. Like, this is real, right?
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. And I think the question about how did we arrive at this idea of God, and how do we know what God is, what he's like, if he's real, is he one, or is he three, or is he many, or is he everything and nothing? Like that, the exploration of that very abstract conversation is a tool set for the exploration of all of these other things, whether it's addiction, or are you a fascist or a racist, or are you whatever someone might want to struggle session you about. And the importance of language, of course, which Heinlein introduces very nicely with this word grok, it plays a big role. But I don't know about your perception of this. As far as I can tell, there seems to be 3 different ways that people arrive at the idea of God. Well, maybe 4, but 3. We'll say 3 plus, because there's direct revelation. I literally saw him, with or without hallucinogens involved, maybe. Or there is I saw things in the world that seem to indicate a higher force or a present. So, seeing him positively, seeing evidence or signs that lead me to think that. Or 3, arriving at the idea of God by reason and deduction. There must be a great power doing this because of X, Y, Z, which is a different experience than the second one. And then finally, there are the people who appeal to the concept for social reasons, which is sort of what we were talking about before. And it's, I mentioned Scott Adams earlier today. I don't know which one of these categories he was in. He wrote a book called God's Debris. He seems to believe in a God of some sort. His notion of God is not the Christian God. It's something closer to Hegel's notion of God. But that's maybe a conversation for another time. But
he arrived there. He switched horses towards the end, but there was some of that out there. So
kind of,
it is what it is. I mean, I don't need to speak.
He set up.
Whenever I hear that, I'm like,
I actually enjoyed it because the way he set up. He gave a deathbed conversion and said in his deathbed conversion that he still doesn't believe. He says, if I wake up in heaven, then trust me, my lack of belief will be resolved. But I think it was a final parting joke where he set up a single screen with 2 films, where some people will see it as a sincere conversion, other people will see it as insincere and fake. And
Okay.
who is anyone to say whether he was sincere or not? It's
Yeah, I only heard it. I
final
only saw
joke.
it third hand, and I was immediately like,
Okay.
boo. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, that's cheating, dude. You don't get
It was.
deathbed conversions are the worst.
They are,
But
yeah.
you know, like that.
He joined
almost,
Ted Bundy in some like midpoint circle of Dante's hell. I don't know.
Exactly.
Oh.
Well, and then there's something I wanted to bring up when we were talking about it earlier, is the idea, you know, because there's human corruption in everything. I mean, can you even call it corruption? Because it's human nature to a certain extent. Like, okay, well, people have interests and they're going to forward their interests, and that's something you can expect. So why wouldn't you expect it? But what is the net good?
Yes.
You know, in terms of like, okay, like organized religion is a funny term because of like, would you prefer disorganized religion? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Chaos religion.
Chaos religion. I mean,
bring it back 40K.
That's a thing, and it's for like nerds. But like chaos magic. But it's nonsense. But if you you know, that corruption still going to be there no matter what, right? And so, okay, when you walk into a cathedral and what people get out of that, you know, what, and you know, let's take aside some of the modern versions of it that I think are just fucking lame, but you know, like old Catholicism, you know, like what, you know, like the Catholicism of like my grandmother, who like was on the level of, you know, got down on your knee, you knelt on rice because it was uncomfortable. Like uncooked rice, which, and you had to wear a veil, and like, but also gave her a lot of comfort and faith, and that was a very important part of her life. And you see that with like
religion.
Mexicans, and like, you know, like Mexicans are very this way. You see this with you know, deeply religious people who are, you know, and it's been maybe a net good in their lives. You know, and you know, because not everyone turns into a child molester or whatever. You know, most people. I mean, this is why they work, right? I mean, like most people who have, you know, are in some of these bigger religions, you know, are getting some kind of positive benefit out of it. You know, like, and they aren't all ruined. You know, like we can talk about other people who like find their way out because they're crazy shit. But you know, like I think that, you know, in most of the history of the Catholic Church, the average person probably got something reasonably decent out of it. It probably kept them out of a little bit of trouble, and you know, it probably, you know, justified, you know, like you know, gave them something to believe in. Gave them, when the plague came and took like half their family, let them think that their family went to heaven. You know, like, you know, some things that were like comforting and how improved their quality of life.
Right.
Right. Now, whether or not it was true, that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
But like, if so many things are based on lies, then which lies are the best? And then that's when you get in this cynical view of it. I think that you probably have talked about a great deal. Like, okay, are you saying this is true because it's beneficial, or are you saying this is true because it's true?
Yeah.
And that's two different things.
And I think there probably are some cynical people using it, but I think for the most part, a lot of the guys who've been moving into either traditionalist Catholicism, like SSPX, Latin Mass, all that, or they've gone the Orthodox route in the last 5 to 10 years. They're not being cynical. They lose track of the disconnection in motivation here. They blur in their heads the connection between heavenly salvation and the salvation of their soul and the freedom from sin and the reconnection of God with the salvation of their culture and their society.
Right.
And they think that there is some like spiritual connection between the world, which the Bible repeatedly enjoins them to hate and to or at least says the world will hate you, and says if he who has the love of the world in him has not, or he who loves the world has not the love of the Father in him. and acts as if love for your nation can coexist with love for God, which it appears those appear to be incompatible.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of levels of discourse to all these things too, because there's a really high level guy who's looking at it that way, and then there's like some other levels just below that, and where it's not maybe cynical, but like they want some belonging and identity,
and that's fine. That's fine to have belonging and identity, and that's how many religions of custom, which we've talked about, the sacred cult and all that. That's actually how they work, and they don't. Those religions of custom and those traditions of custom don't say, by the way, this is objective truth, and if you reject this, you're rejecting the idea of truth itself. That's the whole thing becomes not just incongruent in a way that's like, it can't work for me, but actually it very it essentially steals credit for a great amount of work that has been done outside of its own tradition, and saying, well, everything that is true, because our religion is the truth. It is truth itself at a conceptual level. It's really all grounded in us anyways. Science, every good thing, evolution.
Every good thing.
One of the points that Christopher Hitchens would also bring up in these debates is that, religion, Christianity and Catholicism in particular, spent hundreds and hundreds of years debating against Darwin and against many of these ideas. But then as soon as they become accepted, they come around and say, well, really, like, you can see the early forerunner ideas to this in our scripture. It was really here all along. And come to think of it, it was some of our priests, like Punnett and the Mendel and these other people who were, might be getting those names mixed up, who did some of the forework. So really it is to our credit anyways. And that ability to infinitely rewrite history into your own favor is the byproduct, not just of Christianity, but of any sort of, I think you've called it an internal logic system, where you've constructed a language that can fit everything into it with the appropriately ambiguous terms. And that's really, again, it's true not just with religion like Christianity proper, but with things like science. What does the word science refer to? There's a great Christian blogger, actually, I like to follow, who Vox Day, who took the time to try to articulate the distinction between, I forget the words he used. It was like scientistry, scientody, and scientage, I think, to distinguish between the scientific method, the accumulated body of scientific knowledge, which is not the same as the method, and the institutions which attempt to maintain the knowledge and work out the method. And those three things are not the same thing, but much of the veneration and worship of the name of science, which we saw from the late 2000s up, I think it basically died in 2021, was maybe it's not dead enough, but was basically a conflation of these terms. People could not track the distinction between method and institution and knowledge. And there were, like, any time someone brought up an epistemic question or an or a methodological question that was contrary to a consensus view, they were dismissed as anti-science because they were against the institution. It's like, well, hang on a second. Which one is the real science here? And of course, if asked, they would say, well, it's the method, right? Really, if you go down that rabbit hole far enough, you read like Thomas Kuhn, maybe you read Paul Feyerabend, you see it's actually, there's a layer below that, which is a sort of inquisitive spirit of curiosity, which is below even methodology. That is, I think, truer to what science is about even than method. But tracking those differences in language, I think, are crucial. And it gets people caught up in the Christian conversation too, because they'll get caught up in a word like good, or what are the Catholic, they're like Christian nationalists, but they're the Catholic version of it. they always talk about the collective good. I forget the phrase that they use. Common good. There we go. Common good. They'll talk a lot about the idea of the common good, and they have a very particular meaning to this. Right. It's one of these phrases. It's like what James Lindsay used to talk about with Marxists. They use your words, but not your definitions. And the common good has a very particular meaning within like Catholic political theory, that is not just the intuitive meaning you might infer from hearing that. And so this is what has led me to diving into a whole lot of poetry. Actually, last month I've been working through Owen Barfield and Martin Heidegger, trying to last couple of weeks, because it does seem like language is crucial to keeping track of what we're talking about and not falling into these accidental equivocations. And it corresponds with how people arrive at God too. If you arrive at God by reason, and I arrive at God by revelation. No, he literally appeared to me. I was on a ayahuasca trip, and he came out of my dream like, Freddy, whatever, and appeared to me and spoke to me. Are we like on what grounds other than a shared word, God, can we assume that we're talking about the same being?
Yeah, that's one of the really big questions of the book. Like, what do we even mean by God? What does that mean? And something that you brought up in our conversations, like your discussion, maybe remember that I know this fruitcake who became a Christian because they met Jesus at Burning Man, but very similar, thing. But yeah, there's a. Now I got lost in that thought with that thing. I'm like, well, that's all right.
I was going to ask which one, but
we know. Yeah. Jeremy knows.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But no. There's how you arrive at the what is God? What is it? And what I was going to say, you had brought up earlier. What is the name for it? I always forget. You've brought it up several times, and I've looked it up, and I have it bookmarked on one of my browsers. But the kind of the true religion of Americans.
MTD, moralistic therapeutic deism.
Yes.
I forget the name of the sociologist the pair of sociologists who discovered this, but they found that the true predominant religion of the United States is not Christianity. It is more accurately described as moralistic therapeutic deism, which has 5 precepts. I don't remember them all offhand, but it was basically, there is a God. He wants people to be nice to each other. He doesn't really interfere unless you ask him to sometimes. Good people go to heaven when they die. Very aggressively omitting the hell part. And it is very, like, when you map out the tacit but descriptive claims of moralistic therapeutic deism against the spirit and claims of Christianity, they're very different religions. They're very, very different. But they'll use the word God interchangeably as a kind of olive branch almost. Right. Say, oh, we're kind of on the same side. And you get this at, like, ecumenical conferences where you get an imam and a rabbi and a priest to all talk about God's good. It's like, oh, we're all kind of on the same page.
Yeah.
Eventually, not to keep going back to this, but Christopher Hitchens had this great line in his hate speech defense monologue where he says, not all religions are exactly the same at the moment. They're all plagiarisms of each other, and they're moving in that direction, but they are still different in some ways for now. But there is a converging tendency that might have linguistic origins to it in this word God. I've always thought that the thing that really sets Islam apart And the thing that makes Christianity very Western and by comparison is Islam is an Arabic supremacist religion. And I don't mean that ethnically, I mean that linguistically. Like when you tie it to the Quran, this is sacred and it's only sacred in Arabic. Like it makes that language central to the religion. And in the same way, if you want to be serious about Christianity, you will wind up in Greek eventually, you know, because that is what the New Testament was written in. It comes back to Greek, and a lot of the words in the Greek New Testament have antecedents in Platonic philosophy, in Homer, and these other things. So like the language plays this absolutely crucial role in our understanding. And this even is amusingly true within Christianity. If you look at the Orthodox Catholic schism, it was largely a Latin-Greek schism. Latin is this very legalistic language, whereas Greek is a very philosophical language. Just the words come preloaded with different connotations. And so there's this, anyone who wants to go down that nerdy rabbit hole can look up the filioque debate. But like these very subtle disagreements of language where they didn't even, they shouldn't have actually disagreed in theology at all, except that they were speaking different languages. Right. And I think that's at the root, not just of our misunderstandings of each other, of our beliefs that we are in disagreement when we're not, or our beliefs that we are in agreement when we are not, stem from language. Have you seen Silence, the film by Martin Scorsese? That the Jesuit priests in Japan?
That's where the one they boil the guy alive?
Probably. They do some pretty nasty things.
Yeah, I think they boil a guy alive and then like drown them or whatever, like in the ocean. I've seen clips from it. I don't know that I've seen the whole thing.
It's got some fantastic dialogues in it. But the dialogue between the Japanese samurai inquisitor and these priests, it's very funny. But Liam Neeson plays a Jesuit priest who had apostatized and become Buddhist. And he at one point is speaking to Adam Driver's character. He says, when he's like, he turns Adam Driver around and he points to the sky and says, "Behold, the Son of God." Because apparently these Japanese Christians had thought the Son of God was literally the sun. And they completely misunderstood what the theology actually was. They believed that they were Christian, but the Venn diagram of belief overlap was like very marginal with what the Portuguese priests were actually trying to teach. And it was this point about the fruitlessness and pointlessness of trying to convert these people. It was a very, very good movie with extraordinary dialogue and some interesting insinuations there. But the question about how we arrive at God, I think if you go down there too far, it becomes like an epistemic version of the Euthyphro dilemma, where the concept of God, as basically any religion advances it, can't survive the question, because their concept of God hinges upon merging unlike things conceptually. But that's just my take, and I'm sure serious theologians have thought of this and advanced this. Thomas Aquinas, Augustine, all that.
Right. Well, in the book that we started out talking about, I mean,
yes,
when he Steelman's God, because he has to try to explain it to the Martian, it's like, well, imagine people ask, how did this thing get here? How did this thing get here? How are we sitting here talking? Like, where did all this come from? And where did all this, like, is there a point of origination? And I think that's what a lot of people associate with God, as some kind of point of origination.
A cosmos argument.
Or, like what we would call like Rita, some kind of cosmic order, that there is some order to the universe or something like that. And so they use the word interchangeably with all those things. Then you talked about that moralistic deism or whatever. And that is really the way that most people think in America. I think your average person, when you talk about God, they're like, well, yeah, God wants you to be happy and be nice, and that's and I don't really believe in hell. I call myself a Christian, but I don't really believe in like 90% of the shit that they say. I had so many guys try to join the Word of Fire who were like, well, I'm not that kind of Christian. I'm not like them. And it's always like that. It's like you just don't want to lose the security blanket of having that positive association. And because when maybe it's like Pascal's wager or whatever, maybe it's like something like that, but like they just don't want to let it go. And that's the thing. And to wrap this up, because it's over an hour now,
sure.
But to wrap this up, one of the things that I think is important that I wanted to bring this up because one of our projects of the Order of Fire is trying to find these guys with this cantankerous, that's not true just because you say it's true. Faith, and I just don't want to be manipulated. There's a little bit of manipulation in everything, but I don't want to just be jerked around and told things that aren't true because someone has something to gain, or because they believe that it's good for me, or whatever. I don't want to be hypnotized into believing something that I don't believe. And this is what I've always been very hesitant to go into to have some kind of religious experiences or certain kinds of things or therapy or whatever, because I'm like, what's your telos? Where are you taking me? Because I want to know where you're taking me before I decide if I'm going to submit to the process of going there. And that's always the big thing that they sell is well, you can't know until you're there. Well, the knowing is you hypnotizing me into the thing. And that's what the knowing is. And so I would like to pre-approve that telos. If I'm going to be hypnotized, I would like to know into what. Because some of that could be good. But I want to know what I'm agreeing to believe at the beginning. And the project of Solar Idealism, to wrap this up, the project of Solar Idealism and the Order of Fire, and the big experiment of this is, can we do this without me telling you shit that's not true? Or that I even believe myself? Can we do this without, can we have ritual and meaning and order in our lives and all these things without me telling you some bullshit to make
can we have religious seriousness without supernatural nonsense or let's not say nonsense, stuff we can't know, claiming to know things we can't know
without claiming things that we can't know is the best way to describe it, because of course there are things that we don't know, and we can't, and that's where we've talked about before the boomer hardline atheism missteps is that they make claims of knowing things that they can't know. But to do this honestly, I think is the real challenge of the way that I wanted to do it. And that's why it's kind of a hard sell, because people want to be told. They want there's so many people who just want you to tell them a story. Just tell me a story and that story will be good enough. And that's why, it's kind of the same as the argument against libertarianism. Well, it'd work if everybody had 120 IQ. But not in really any other way.
Even then, that's questionable.
It's questionable even still, but there's certain requirements to making that work. We all have to reason this out together. Well, can you reason? There's people who can't really do that, and so that's I think Solar Idealism is definitely an approach to this that is, can we do this honestly? Can we do it in a straightforward way? Can I tell you what I'm doing? Can I show you the math and tell you why? And rather than the just have faith argument. And so I think that's what we're really trying to get at, and that's why I found this so interesting. And that's, like I said, I loved this character, this
Jubal
Harshaw character. He's so witty and but very much like us, willing to concede the point that he doesn't know everything, but also, I don't trust you. He didn't even trust the man from Mars. He's like, I think his old ones are probably bullshit, but whatever. So it's just it's an interesting jumping off point. And again, I recommend the book from what I've read of it so far to anyone listening, and I'll put it.
It's a great read. It's a fun read. It's a good example of this kind of straight man thought experiment and of the creation of language. Like grok has become a very powerful word in the last 4 or 5 years.
But it's good to know where it came from.
Yes, it's always good to know the origins.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, this is the etymology of grok, literally.
Precisely.
So. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening and watching, and for those of you who will listen later on a podcast, or watch this tomorrow or the next day since it's late. But thank you for watching, and as always, we just posted our events for the year. Well, I'll post the events. It's Instagram tomorrow, and I'll probably send out a newsletter sometime this week. Our events for the Order of Fire this year, and what we're going to do this year is that everything we do is going to be organized artistically around these events. So we're going to have people in the order. We're going to have conversations like this. We're going to have other separate conversations that are more like organized, and art, poetry, music. People working on tons of music right now, all in the service of a theme. And then that theme will change from ritual to ritual. So we have 3 rituals this year. I've had a lot of interest. We have a lot of interest in the one in Arizona. If you're in Arizona, this is a great time to join up. And if you're into our stuff, and it's got me. I'm really excited for what we're doing in the next couple of years, because we have this thing, and then we're going to put together this big book of all these events and all this work that we've done, and exploring all these different archetypes and ideas and so forth. So I think it's going to be a really cool thing. I'm really excited about this kind of new direction. It's not really a new direction, but it's a more focused direction.
Yeah, it's expansion upon what we've started.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is about refining the thing. So anyway, Mr. Robertson, and thank you for joining me. Thank you for everybody joining us, and see you later. Stay solar.
Stay solar.
Thank you for watching or listening to the Journal of Solar Culture. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and leave us a comment. The first volume of our journal is available in paperback, and now, finally, on Kindle. Pick it up in our store or on Amazon.